talking about, Tripp was talking about a love for Greensboro, and that too came from Keller. You know, Keller spent about 3 years going into New York before he started Redeemer. He would go to a different church every Sunday for about 3 years. And he said the one thing that he found as sort of a subtext, especially in New York, you especially get this in New York, like I was talking earlier about the fortress mentality, you get it in every place, in the evangelical circles. And that is that in these churches there was always this subtext. If it wasn't said outright, it was the subtext of, aren't you glad you're in here and not out there in that terrible city? Aren't you glad you're safe here for a couple hours before you go out to that evil, evil place? And Keller said, you know, how many people go to New York because it's evil? Nobody goes to New York because it's evil. They go to New York because they want to excel. They love the city. They love what it stands for. They love everything about it. So these people going to church and saying, aren't you glad you're not out there in that evil place? I said, forget you. And besides that, even if that's not true, God put us here in Greensboro, right? Celebrate Greensboro. Celebrate where God has put us. Celebrate the people here. Celebrate what they're doing. Yeah, okay, next. We won't do that anymore. Oh, this is about cities. I should have taken that out. Real quick, another thing that happened as we moved here to Greensboro, I read a book by Brian McLaren called A New Kind of Christian. Brian McLaren to me has sort of gone off in Netherlands somewhere in recent books. I love him, I like what he said, but this book I would really recommend, A New Kind of Christian by Brian McLaren. If you've ever had difficulty understanding postmodernism, that'd be the book to get. Because I always thought, what's postmodern? How to get more modern than modern? Huh? I'm modern right now, how do I get more postmodern? Anyway, so anyway, I was looking up some stuff, and one of Brian McLaren's friends is Jim Henderson. And he was a pastor in the Midwest, I think, Indiana, and had a small Bible church. And they had weekly visitation, or witnessing, right? People would sign the card on Sunday mornings, and they'd go on Wednesday night and witness and visitation. And he hated it. Everybody hated it. Only people who showed up were Pharisees, and you know, they're sourpusses anyway. So, you know, so you got a bunch of sourpusses going out to tell people about Jesus, damn it. And so finally, after a while, Jim Henderson said, I'm sick of this. He goes to the elders and said, let's stop witnessing. You know, the elders are like, hey, okay. and so then they go to the congregation and said, we're going to stop witnessing. Everybody, yay, okay, because they don't want that guilt trip either. You know, even if you didn't go, you still feel guilty for not going, right? So Jim Henderson preached a sermon, and he said, okay, we're going to stop witnessing, but obviously we're doing something wrong, because God wants us to tell people about Jesus. We should be eager to tell people about Jesus. We're doing something wrong because we all hate it so much. He said, let's start praying that God would show us what it means to witness. And so they started praying, and they focused on the verse, even a cup of cold water given in my name. And they started thinking, what is a cup of cold water in a desert culture? In a desert culture, a cup of cold water is life-saving, it's refreshment, it's fellowship, it's joyful, it's wanted, it's desired. You know, it's all this stuff in the desert culture. That's what a cup of cold water is. And so, so they started praying, what is a cup of cold water in our culture? And they started praying and thinking about it, praying and thinking about it. And finally, I think about it after 3 months, they finally came to the conclusion that in our culture, a cup of cold water is. Okay, that's all the time we have time for today. I'm just kidding. Okay, in our culture, a cup of cold water is just listening. Just listening to people. And so he preached another sermon. He goes, okay, for the next year we're going to do nothing but listen to people. He said, don't feel like you have to take up for God's reputation. God's big enough to take care of himself. So if you're talking to somebody and someone says Jesus was nothing but a fake, a hypocrite, a creep, a dope-smoking, hallucinogenic, no good for nothing, blah, 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 blah. Don't take up for God. Let him take up for himself. Just listen. Just listen. So they did that. They started listening, started listening, started listening. Turned the church upside down. They started having so many visitors come to the church. And most of them weren't believers. most of them had not made a decision yet. They just wanted to be where these strange people that listened to them were. So many non-Christians started coming to this church, they started having a thing on Sunday night called the Lost Interviews, where they would get people up that weren't Christians and interview them. And they'd say, like, Carol, you're not a Christian, right? Right. Why are you coming to the church? Oh, I started talking to Janet a couple of months ago, and you know, she seemed like nice, and so she invited me to church, so I kind of liked it, so I've been around. And, okay, well, you know, we think you're lost, you know that, don't you? She said, yeah, I know that. And he said, well, what do you think about that? Well, I think you guys are probably lost too. So, but they would have these interviews with people, and the crux of that is that they would listen to give people dignity. To give people dignity. I want to know what you think. And see, we are so determined as believers that I don't care what you think, here's what you need to know. Right? Here's the message you need to hear. And we've lost the dignity of hearing someone else's opinions and someone else's. And a side note to this, I'll try to make this real quick. Several years after this, a guy put his soul on eBay. Did you hear about this? A guy put his soul on eBay. You know, this is the most unresponsive group I've seen.
No, they're very quiet. They're very quiet.
Really?
They're thinking.
You hear about this? Anyway, right. So he put his soul on eBay, and what he meant by that is that whoever got high bid, he would give them 10 hours to convert him to any religion. And so, sure enough, Jim Henderson won $500. Bought a soul for $500. Jim Henderson was in Indiana. This guy was in California. His name was Casper, believe it or not. And Jim calls Casper, and Casper says, "Okay, how do you want to do this?" He said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Well, you want to send me tapes? You want to talk to me for 10 hours? How do you want to do it?" He said, No, I don't want to do that." He said, "What I want to do, I want you to start a blog. And I want you, for 10 different weeks, I want you to go to a different Christian church in your area. And I want you to write every week what you thought of that church and what you thought was horrible, what you thought was good. And I just want to hear your opinions on it." And that's what he did. And they actually wrote a book. Maybe Casper is a believer today, but I think when they wrote the book, he still was not a believer. But they wrote a book called Jim and Casper Go to Church. It's on Amazon. So, but again, it's giving people dignity to hear their stories.
And they've become friends.
Yeah,
I mean,
they've
they're friends now.
become great friends. Yeah.